let me just go ahead and take you to the page here, the module that talks about Photoshop. And Photoshop is going to have this thing called the toolbar. So I'm going to talk about that, how the tools lay out, what the different things that the tools allow you to do. And then in the menus, some of the pull down things, what they call the hidden tools, but the tools you don't see right there. And so we'll be taking a look at these and I'll be going through these, but you should be reading these pages that I have here as well. Sort of, you know, the way to do this class would be to sort of go through them before I talk about them, so you have some idea of what it is that I'm talking about. And again, if you just watch my demo, then go through the module, that's fine too. Usually it will add more information than I give you. Like I will not go through every single tool, but I want to give you the information here in case you want to find that tool. Again, we're going to be dealing with Photoshop, but this is not a Photoshop class, which means I am not going to show you everything there is in Photoshop. Photoshop is a huge program. It's an extremely useful program. It's a program that if you go on in the visual arts of just about any kind, that you will be using Photoshop. And, you know, we have a class just on Photoshop, although it's taught through the graphic design school. So, you know, or graphic design program. So he approaches it more from a graphic design, although he will go through a lot more of Photoshop. I'm not sure who's teaching it. I know who runs the program over there, but I'm going to show you Photoshop as a photographer approaches Photoshop. I'm going to show you the tools and things that I use a lot and how I go about using them. We will be talking about the basic concepts. So we'll be going through some of the tools, not all of them. I'll be talking about layers and we'll be talking about masks and how to do those types of things. But we'll just be sort of scratching the surface of what Photoshop can do. So, and you can see I'm right now it says this quiz is unpublished because I haven't decided whether I'm going to give a Photoshop quiz. I probably will. I'm just trying to decide how much to weight it. So, you know, how much versus the actual using of it. So that's where we're at. So take a look at that intro to the toolbox, because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Again, a lot more information written out than, well, I shouldn't say a lot more, different information written out than what I will be talking about. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this demo of removing basic distractions from the image I sent. So the image I sent you, let me go ahead and go down here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop with you. All right, so you should be looking at my desktop. There should be a little mountain here. If there isn't, let me know, but I'm assuming that there is. So with that said, here is the image that I sent to all of you. I went ahead and downloaded it here. It's a JPEG image, and I can do a couple of things with it first. So hopefully you all got it downloaded. Was there anybody who had trouble just downloading the image? Okay. If not, great. If you downloaded it, perfect, pull it up, because now is when we're going to go ahead and use this image here in a few minutes to, I'm going to show you what needs to be done with it.
Did you send it through an email?
I'm sorry?
Did you send it through an email?
I sent it through the Rio Hondo email, so it should be at your Rio Hondo email address.
All right.
It wouldn't allow me to send it through Canvas. I don't know why. Maybe I just don't know how to do that correctly, but it wouldn't allow me to send through the Canvas mail system. So I sent it to your Rio Hondo email. Thank you for asking that question, because that's one of the things I should have told you. If you haven't gotten it, check your Rio Hondo email. I went through. If you're enrolled in the class, you got it because I sent it this weekend. So, okay. So you should have gotten that image. You should have downloaded it. If not, go ahead and take a second right now while I talk about other things and see if you can find it in your Rio Hondo email. Okay, so we're going to be working with that image right there. Right now, you should be seeing my desktop, which is here, the little mountains. You should see that image over here. Now, we have been using a couple of programs. We have been, well, we've actually just been using one, Bridge. Remember here in the Creative Cloud, when you click on that and you go to all apps, you should have Photoshop as one of the apps down here. If you haven't installed it, you're going to want to install it. I'm sorry, maybe I should have told you that last week. So if you haven't installed it, install it now. And I went ahead and I've already opened Photoshop. So there it is. Okay, so, and another thing that has bothered me is a couple of people have just now sent me emails saying, oh, I never got the Creative Cloud. I don't know what you've been doing for the last 3 weeks. We've been dealing with Bridge. I've talked about it. You know, if you don't have the cloud, if you have not gotten access, you have to let me know. I'm not sure if there is a cutoff now for them getting access for it, but I have a list, those couple of people that have recently told me, I'm going to put you on the list. I'm going to let the college know. But if you haven't accessed the Creative Cloud, you have to let me know. We're already, this is the start of the 5th week. We're already 25% of the class has been done. You need to use Bridge and Photoshop in order to make a proof sheet. So, you know, those people that haven't been turning in contact sheets, proof sheets, I'm guessing you don't have the software or you just haven't paid attention to what I'm saying. You need to have those things. Okay. And that just reminded me. You've made contact sheets, most of you here, I think. I've seen your contact sheets, which tells me you're using Bridge and Photoshop. So great. All right. Go ahead. Okay, so if you got this, we can drag it into Bridge. And you know that if you drag that little icon down here into Bridge, it's going to show up. It's showing me my folders and whatever images I have here online. And I can go from Bridge here. I could go ahead and go to my camera raw settings, and I could make any changes I want. Okay. Now, if I take it into Bridge and I make any changes and I go here to open, see how it launches Photoshop for me up here? So I still have Bridge behind. So it's opened another window that is Photoshop. And the way I know it's Photoshop is I recognize this toolbar over here. Does everybody see that? I think since I went through my desktop that you should see all the windows that I open. Is that the way it's working for everybody? So right now, you should be seeing a window with the Photoshop tool. It should say Photoshop up here. It should have the Photoshop toolbox down here.
I'm pretty sure I can see it.
Huh?
I think we can see everything.
You can see it? If you can see it, then everybody should be able to see it. So that's great. All I need to know is that you're there with me. So thank you. All right, I will move on. So here is the Photoshop window. Here are the Photoshop tools. I can click back and go back to Bridge here. And oops, I clicked too hard. Where's my desktop? Okay, so here is my desktop. Here is that image. So I can go through Bridge if I want to. And again, when I double click on it, it will open it in Photoshop for me. That's all I was trying to show you is you can work through Bridge. If I had made any changes to it, so right now, if I had gone up here to Camera Raw and I had changed my exposure or anything, when I went to open it, it would take those changes and it would also open it in Photoshop with those changes already made. So you have the option to work on things in Bridge and then take them into Photoshop. All right. But you can also just take your images. And right now, instead of going to Bridge, I can go ahead and take this into Photoshop. And it opened it in Camera Raw for me because I had already made changes to it. So let me reset this. Since I had already made changes in Bridge when I opened it, it took it into Camera Raw, which is a separate thing from Bridge and Photoshop. It's an add-on to them. If I were to just take the image as I downloaded it into Photoshop, it would just open it in Photoshop for me. So, again, we're gonna be talking about keeping things sort of organized when you're working, which area you're working in, what program you're working in, how those are working together, all of that sort of thing. And sometimes it can get a little bit messy. So there are certain things I'm going to try to point out to you. So right now, you can see the Photoshop toolbox over here, but you can also see that it says Photoshop up here. As far as it tells me what file I have open here, and I can have multiple files open, and there'll be times that we do that. I did want to show you up here at the window. For right now, what I wanted to show you is if you go to Workspace, there's what's called the Essentials default. That's usually where I work from. So you can always go over here to that window. You can also go down to the Photography default, and you'll notice that when I went to that, I get the histogram over here. The tools also change that are being used over here. So this allows you to set up your workspace the way you want to. If you're painting, if you're graphic, and I can reset the photography. So you can decide what you want to work in. I'm going to go ahead and just go to the essentials, to the default. I like that I have my layers here. We're going to talk about those. These are shortcuts to different things. These little tabs here, as you switch between them, open up other panels behind. So again, it's a very complicated program. I'm going to go through things fairly quickly because, like I said, I want to introduce you to these things. I don't want to spend a lot of time on them. And what will happen is for the next 10 weeks as we use Photoshop, I'll be going through things and you'll see me use them. If you have questions you need to ask, sometimes they won't make sense. Sometimes you'll come back to them and they're not working, and there's reasons, always a reason for it. But the software can get a little complicated. You have to sort of, all of these things are here because it's, I don't want to say it's as complicated as driving a plane, but at least as complicated as driving a car. And, it's about paying attention to things in front of you to see what's going on, what tool you're in, what file you're in, how those tools are being adjusted, which layer you're using, how to create layers, how to do all kinds of stuff. And you'll see me make mistakes all the time. I'll go to something and it won't work because I didn't pay attention to something, because I skipped something, because I had something selected or not selected. But again, I'll come back to those sorts of things. So again, this is just the Essentials default. This is what I'm going to work from in this case. Sometimes I'll work in the photo window depending on what I'm working on or what I need to do. But for this class, I will probably just always go here to the Essentials default so that I know that we're working from the same sort of visual menu here. So, all right now you'll notice over here, my image is open in this window. It's this guy standing here with this thing back here. And over here, I have the layers and it says background. So all of that is as it should be. These are things that we will be trying different things with. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. If you read the module on the Photoshop toolbox, you'll see that there's what are called selection tools. And then I forget what they call the rest of them. I only remember selection tools. And then there's some photo specific tools and all sorts of things. Maybe I'll go back and read that so I can better match what the module says. Um, but Photoshop is an amazing program, and it just keeps getting better. It keeps getting bigger. You know, I'm sure that there are things here that I have never even seen before. A lot of times I'll watch demos online, or we have access to this really good instructional programs. And whenever they do an update, or you know, they redo Photoshop, they've always added stuff to it, and I always have to figure out how to use them and all that kind of stuff. But today I'm sort of gonna kind of go through some of the sort of quick way of working. I'm gonna give you a couple of wow tools that I use all the time that are just great, that are amazingly applicable tools. So we'll be looking at those sorts of things. So selection tools over here. This is called the move tool. And the move tool we'll be using all the time because it allows you to move things around. Now, if you'll notice, there's a little arrow down here in the corner of this box. When you click on that, you'll see that there's other tools below it. Here is the artboard tool. I won't be talking about the artboard tool. I don't use it. I don't use it in photo. I may come back, but it's a fairly new tool. The move tool, though, we will be using all the time. These are selection tools. We'll be using these all the time. And what a selection tool allows you to do is you click on it, you come over, and you see how my image is this sort of crosshairs. What that is my cursor, so the arrow has turned into a crosshair. When I take my, well, I'm working on my mouse, I click on the mouse and then I drag across an area. When I refer to the marching ants, that means this little black and white line that goes around things. When the black and white line is around things, what's in it is the active area. What's outside of it is the inactive area. What do I mean by that? Well, so in here I'm going to go to deselect. All right, so I just turned off those marching ants. What does it mean? Okay, in Photoshop, here's what you have to understand. When we're working in Photoshop, we are working on the pixels that comprise this image. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me zoom in on this. See each of these little squares right there? They have all been given a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's basically your image is made up of this mosaic of tiles. This looks like a tiled bathroom wall right here. Each one of those tiles has been assigned a specific number that shows up as a color. So you have these little tiny squares of color that make up the image, okay? So that when we go back to the normal image, you can see, so this little area right here, let me go ahead and zoom in on that. You can see that what looks like this white spot on that rusty piece of metal. Each one of those is made up of a color, so that when, and I'm holding down, so sometimes I will use the tool and I will use what's called a shortcut. So right now I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to hold down the Option key, and you'll notice in that magnifying glass a minus sign comes up. As I hold down the Option key and now hit the mouse, the Option key is, so you have the space bar at the bottom of your keyboard. Next to it should be the Command key. Next to that should be the Option key. I'm working on a Mac. I'm sorry if you're working on a PC. I'm not exactly sure which key is which key on the keyboard. I've always worked on Mac. So I'm sorry, you'll have to figure that out if you're working on a PC. I know that they're similar, but so again, right now I have this magnifying glass, which came from the very bottom of my toolbox. It uses to zoom in on an area. If I take my finger and hold down the Option key, the minus sign comes up, and as I click the mouse, I zoom out. So, and you can see those little tiny squares that make up that image. Okay, I can also go to View, Zoom in, Zoom out. Now you'll notice here, it's telling me the Command key. These are all shortcuts. So when we come to these menus and we roll over them, these menus come down. And next to them, you'll see whatever you're asking the computer to show you. And then some of them will have shortcuts. So we'll be talking about those as well. Again, I'm sort of bouncing all over the place because I'm trying to show you as somebody who works in it. I'm not going to break it down. Well, here's what we're doing here and here's what we're doing here, because these same things will come up time and time again. It's the way they work together. Most of you have worked in Mac or even in a PC environment that is similar to this. So you sort of understand flyout menus, you sort of understand where things are, you understand about a mouse. It used to be when I first started doing this, some people had never used a mouse before. I'm assuming that most of you do that. Most of you have smartphones and things like that that work very similar. So again, I'm making some assumptions about your understanding. I'm starting from a sort of a lower middle level of understanding. So some of it's going to be redundant for you. Some of it is going to be what you feel like is just obvious. For others of you, it's going to be completely new. And so I'm trying to thread the needle here. But for those of you that are here, if you have a question, please yell it out or whatever, so that I know to take a few extra seconds to go over that question, because I know that I tend to go very fast when I lecture. I tend to ramble. I tend to spit a little bit when I lecture. So great thing about being here in Zoom is you don't have to sort of dodge the spit coming out of my mouth as I lecture. I know that I have certain tendencies. You have to sort of step in if you're not understanding something, if I'm going too fast. If you want me to go back over it, let me know. For those of you who are not here in front of me while we're doing this live and you don't get it, go back and watch the lecture. If you're watching this on a recording, it's great because you can go back and watch me do it again. If you still have a question after watching me do it 3 or 4 times, then send me that question. Okay. All right. So I know that I'm running around and I know it may seem a little bit overwhelming. And for some of you, it's going to be like, what was he doing? Again, these are all being recorded, so you can go back and watch them again. And again, the great thing about being here in real time is if you have a question, let me know. Remember, if you have that question, there are probably other people out there with that question. Some of you just have dumb questions. That is going to be the case, but oh well. It's not going to kill you to ask a dumb question. I may make fun of you or something like that, but better to ask it than to not. Okay, I feel myself racing. I don't know why. I did have 2 cups of coffee this morning, so this may go really fast. Okay, so right now I was just using the magnifying glass down there, which is the zoom tool to move in and out of my image. And we'll be using that because there are times that you're going to want to zoom in on an area of your image. But what I was trying to get at was that your image is made up of these little tiny squares that have colors assigned to them. When we work with the images, we're basically taking those tiles and moving them around, changing them, doing stuff to those tiles, which are called pixels. Your image is made up of these pixels with information assigned to each one of them. All right, so moving back to our selection tools. Here is a selection tool. So I was showing you the rectangular marquee tool. When I come over and I select the rectangular marquee tool, I select through here. What this is saying, these marching ants are saying, inside here is active, outside of here isn't. Now, there's different selection tools. There's the elliptical marquee tool, which is kind of like a circle or ovals. It's elliptical. So again, as you make a change, whatever's inside, active, whatever's outside is not active. We also have single columns, multiple columns. Now, When I go to deselect here, you'll notice that the shortcut is Command key D. I use that all the time. I just use my other hand. I hold down Command with my thumb and I hit D with my finger. So when you see me deselect, that's what I'm doing. I very rarely go up here to select, deselect, or select all. So these are things that we'll be using a lot of times, but sometimes I'll be using the shortcut and I may not tell you that I am. Okay. All right. So as you can see, I'm here. When I move the cursor in, you'll see that the cursor changes sometimes inside the active area and it's different outside the active area. So that's going to be important here in a second when I show you things. Now, if I want to deselect, again, I'm holding down the Command key and I hit D and it turns off the marching ants. All right. Also, when you use these selection tools, the rectangular marquee tool, you click and drag from a corner. Okay. That's the way the tool works without touching anything. Again, Command D to get rid of that. Now, if I want to keep it as a square, so right now I can drag any shape rectangle I want to through here. If I want to keep it as a square, I take my finger and I hold down the Shift key. And as I click and drag, see, no matter where I drag, it's going to maintain a square. Okay. That doesn't seem all that impressive here, but when you go to the elliptical marquee tool, again, click and drag from a corner. But if you hold down the Shift key, you'll click and drag a circle. I use that one a lot for different things. So, okay. Also, if I hold down the Option key and click and drag, hold on, because something's not working the way I want it to. Okay, it is. So if I want to put a circle around this, if I hold down the Option, or if I just want to put the elliptical marquee tool around this, if I hold down the Option key, now what I drag is from the center out. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. So right here, if I just wanted to put a small circle around that little thing, I can click and drag. Now I'm holding down the Option key with this finger, but I'm going to put this finger, well, I'm going to hold down the Option key with my thumb now, and I'm going to put my middle finger on the Shift key and watch this. So right here, the middle of this stain, I hold down the Option key, which allows me to drag it from the center out. If I hold down the Shift key, now it also makes it a circle that I take from the center out. I use that one a lot when I select things like wheels or signs, things like that. So we'll be using some of these tools with the Option key and the Shift key and the Command key in order to make them do different things. All right, so now let's go back to a selection tool. Let me go ahead and take the rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to go ahead and select from this corner down. I'm going to drag it through this sign. Now you'll notice outside I still have the crosshairs. If I click and drag anywhere else, it just selects what area I'm dragging through. Okay. Here's the amazing part. I'm going to take this finger. I'm going to hold down the Command key. Notice how I get the Move tool on the outside, but when I move this in, see how I get the arrow with the scissors? The scissors mean cut. So now I press the mouse and I drag that area of pixels that I have selected, move around. So I have said, it's like taking a net. No, it's not a net because it's not 3D, but I move them around and I can put them wherever I want. When I let go, you'll see there's still the marching ants. I'm not holding down the Option key anymore. I'm just using the mouse to move those pixels around. Once I take my fingers and I deselect, now I have moved that rectangle up there. You'll notice it's like pasted it. So it's like I took something, I cut it, and I pasted it over here. It's no longer selected. If I try to take a move tool, it's not going to move it anymore. Okay? You'll also see that where it cut, it left white pixels. All right? Just bear with me for the time being. So you'll see that it filled it in with white pixels. The reason for that is because I had white as, these are my foreground and background colors. I have white as background. It went ahead and dropped in just white pixels. Doesn't seem important now, but these things will build on each other, and I'll show you why. So again, any selection tool right now, you'll notice this says background on it. That's important too. As I click and drag, if I hold down the Command key, I can move those wherever I want to move those pixels. When I hit deselect, it pastes them down. It leaves this spot of white pixels. Okay? All right. So I've made some changes. I'm going to revert my image back to where I began. All right. So though that is selection tools that you'll be using all the time. This right here, these selection tools are the lasso tools. You'll see that you have the lasso, the polygonal lasso, and the magnetic lasso. The normal one is this lasso tool. And what it allows me to do is to drag any shape I want around and create a selection, again, holding down the Command key. And you can see how it allows you to make odd. I just used Command Z, the undo command, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. Okay, so it allows you to drag any shape. You'll also notice up here that there are going to be different things that come up. So right now, when I did that, you'll notice that the edge was a little blurred. So with this tool here, here's my rectangular marquee tool. You'll see that the feathering says 0. I click, drag, hold down the Command key and move this over. You'll see that it had a very hard edge to that move. If I set the feathering up here to 15 and I click and I drag, notice how the corners here are a little rounded. I hold down the Command key and I click and drag. See how that edge right there, how it looks soft? Because what it's done is it's what's called feathering that selection. So it's allowed me to move that over, and you see how the feathering is like removing part of it, but leaving part of it there. It allows a transition from this to this. It's sort of like overlaying something. It's like if you're a DJ and you have one song sort of ending and the other song coming in, and eventually the other song takes over. That's what feathering is like. Now I keep going to this undo, Command Z, and you can undo whatever it is that you've done. You can keep going back. We'll talk about how that works. So the shortcut for that is Command Z. So when you see things just moving back, back, and back, it's because I'm using Command Z. All right, I'm getting a little in the weeds with all these things right here. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time. But again, here's my lasso tool. Again, here's the feathering. If I set it to 15 and I click and drag around him, now I take the Command key, I can move that part of his body over here. And now you can see where it transitioned out, but you can see how also it just sort of transitioned that wall that was behind him into the other wall. So it makes it for a clean sort of transition. That's what feathering does. These other tools, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today. They are extremely useful. The polygonal lasso tool, you click, and it just allows you to do polygons, straight lines till you get to something. And then this last one we're going to spend some time on a little bit later, which is the magnetic lasso tool, which finds an edge for you as you drag around an object. And it allows you to do that. Kind of, I could also go to edit, copy, edit, paste, and it would put another one there that would allow me to duplicate it. You'll notice that it made what's called another layer. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but I can also then go ahead and just make multiple versions of this one if I wanted to. You'll also notice that once something gets to the edge, it falls off. You're working on what is a canvas. That's what we call it. And just like a canvas, if you were making a painting, there's only so much canvas and then it ends. So once you go over the edge, there's just no more there. All right, I'm getting a little in the weeds for what I want to do, but these are all going to be concepts that we're going to come back and revisit over and over again. So I'm going to be spending time talking about them again and again. If it's not making sense to you right now, that's fine. Because the way I try to teach it is that it builds upon the next thing. Oh, you get this, you'll get that, you'll get that. And you'll keep coming back to them and you'll get better at it. It's like learning a language. You know, you learn a few words and then, oh, what's the word for that? Oh, I can use that word here and here. Oh, if I add ing to it, then it changes the word this way. It's the same thing visually. You're learning how to sort of put together an image using Photoshop. Photoshop is its own visual language that we're working with here. So again, I know it can seem a little overwhelming and intimidating sometimes. For those of you that are like, what, this is all, some of you have already used Photoshop and you understand what's going on. Other people haven't. So I try to find that middle ground. Okay. All right, so these are our selection tools. The magic wand is a great one. I'll come back through that. This is the crop tool. And what the crop tool allows you to do is, and you'll notice up here, you have these different things. I'm going to go to the one that just says ratio, which means that you can click and drag these. Oh, I had a ratio set up. When I click and drag, I can just go ahead and change this however I want. And if I hit return, so take my finger and I hit the return key, it crops the canvas. So it's like taking scissors and cutting that image down, okay? So again, if I take the crop tool and if I click and drag across an area of the image, it will show me where it's going to crop. It's going to show me what it's getting rid of. So let's say I just wanted to crop down to him. I could do that, okay? So that's what the crop tool does. It allows you to, and you'll see here I go to revert all the time. Revert takes you back to the last place you saved the image. So I haven't saved the image at all. It just keeps going back to where I originally opened it. Okay, and we will be using this tool today, the spot healing brush. I'm going to show you the clone tool. The spot healing brush shares a menu, I forget what they call these, a window with the patch tool, which I'll be talking about as well today. So I'm going to give you a couple of the wow tools, the ones that I just think are amazing, that I use all the time, that weren't in Photoshop originally, that are out now, and they just make things so nice. Okay, so those are tools, and we'll be going through them. We're going to be talking about the dodge and burn tool here. There's also a sharpen tool that we'll be talking about. So actually, we'll go through nearly every tool over here, okay? But again, there's a lot of other tools and a lot of other things. Across the top here, these different menus, the one I will be using a lot is image. and we'll be using image adjustments over and over again. These are specifically photo adjustments, brightness, contrast, and exposure. I use the levels all the time, and I'll show you how those work in just a second. So again, get used to sort of the layout going on here. I'm going to go through things kind of quickly, but I wanted you to get an understanding of what's happening. So when I roll over a menu, here are the things available to me, and how I'll be using them. Okay. So first thing with this image isn't bad. It's okay. It's a little overexposed to me. No, I'm sorry. It's a little underexposed to me. It's a little too dark. There's not a lot of detail. I don't like that the white, it's a little gray. It just looks a little washed out. Now, again, I could have taken this into Camera Raw and done some specific adjustments to it. I could still go here and go to exposure. And so again, just like in Camera Raw, we could change the exposure of this image. So you can see how as I overexpose or underexpose it, how it gets, here's where it was. If I give it about a half stop more, you'll see how it lightens things up. So there's a full stop difference. So that's if I shot it one stop more. I'm not going to talk so much about offset or gamma correction right now. If you want to play around with those, you can. You will also notice that we have these eyedroppers. So last week I showed you in Camera Raw with the white balance how to choose the white dropper. You go to whatever you think should be white and you click on it and it will change the image. It'll make that area that you just chose white and it will change all the other pixels in a way that sets that as what should be white. This one also has a gray and a black. So here's my black. And you can see that's not so great. It's making it darker. If I were to say this should be black, it's going to give me something completely different. So those are the eyedroppers. I use this one all the time, levels. And you'll see that you have a histogram here. It has a layout of the pixels. You'll also notice the eyedroppers over here on the side. So you'll start to see these same things come up and do all sorts of things. So again, if I use the wide eyedropper, notice how it changes the histogram. That means everything, let me show you. Image adjustment level. And take the wide eyedropper. See where what this is telling me is, oh, there is a big number of pixels that sort of lay in this space between gray and white. This is how many are just all white. If I click here, notice how, wow, now I have a lot of pixels that are all white and this sort of transitions it. So everything up to that point now, it just turned white. Okay, and that did, you know, I kind of like the way that did it. So you can decide which one you like working better with, the exposure or with the levels. The reason why I use the levels is, so I can go ahead and take my white dropper here. Maybe I just go, oh, you know, that should be white. And you'll notice how I start to lose detail in some of these highlight areas, all of that sort of thing. I can also go to here and I can ask it to look at it, the auto version, and you'll see how it moves everything sort of over. And I just hit Command Z to take me back. That works okay. I can even just take the white slider and go, let's see here. When do things fall into white for me where I want them? Okay. You'll notice that the gray slider also moved over, and here's the black slider. I can take the black slider and go, oh, everything darker than this point should go black. And you can see how I can just go ahead and make a silhouette of him as well. So, you know, you can use these sliders All right, so let me go here. So I use that white one a lot, especially when I'm photographing for a client or something like that. And I know something in that image is white. It's supposed to be white because it will change my color balance, all of that kind of stuff, and make that point white. If I'm working on an image like this, a lot of times I will just go ahead and use my white slider, slide it over. And then I really like, the reason why I use levels is because I can use this mid-tone slider to correct a lot of stuff. So I just go ahead and get that. And you can see how all of a sudden now it brings in so much more detail. In his shirt starts to get more detail. All of that is going on. I'll start to lose detail in these highlights. So it depends on what you want to do. All of a sudden, look how bright this image looks. This looks like a very bright sunny day, kind of a summer day, versus where the image started, which feels a little, I don't know, overcast, a little more, it's a little more depressing. It's a little darker. Literally, it is darker. So again, these things are meant for you to use in a way that you want to adjust your image. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this over. I sort of like the way that my walls gets a little wider here. I like that the shirt gets a little bit more detail. I want to see the rest of it versus it falling into just black, so it could look like it just has the skull there if I wanted. But I'm going to go ahead and show that there's more to that image. I like the way that brings out a little bit more detail in the face, although there's other ways to do that as well. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So I've just adjusted the background. Now, this tool here, the dodge tool, what dodging and burning is, dodging is a way of lightening an area. Burning is a way of making an area darker. You'll notice that when I choose one of these tools, let me go ahead and take the dodge tool. I come over here and I'm getting this big circle. You'll also notice up here at the top, it's showing me a number. What this is a brush, and it's showing me how many pixels that brush is. So now if I come down to 118 pixels, you'll see how it's a much smaller brush. If I go back up, see how it gets bigger. So that is what changes the size. Now the brush is where it's going to be the active area. So that if I want to lighten up like an area in his face or his hair, again, it's asking me exposure, it's asking me what it's doing. So right now at 100%, as I dodge his face and his arm, you can see how I'm just lightening those areas up. If that is too intense, I can change the exposure. So if I take it down to 50%, now it's not going to dodge it as much right away. But as I go over things, it will make them lighter. Okay, so that is that tool. I'm going to revert this back. So this will go back to where I had last saved it before I even used the image adjustment. If I use the burn tool, again, I can change the size of my brush. I'm going to leave the exposure up at 100% so you can see what this does. Burn makes things darker. So as you can see, as I go over this area with that, so each time I'm clicking and dragging, it's making that area darker. So those are the dodging and burning tools. Now, if I go ahead and go up here to adjustments and I go back to my levels, let's say I slide this over to here and I change the midtones where I want them. If I go to File, Save, it saves it. Once I do that, I have changed those pixels. I cannot go back to that original image. It has now changed that file. It has changed the pixels. Unlike in Camera Raw, where you were just like, oh, okay, show me it differently. It has now changed the actual pixels. That file is now different. And that's important to understand because there are times that you may not want to do that. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to File, Save. So I just undid it and I went back. So this is where my image was originally. What will happen sometimes is you may want to make adjustments. And you hit OK. You go to File, Save As. Now, if I go to File, Save As, notice how it says demo.lighter. I changed the name of it. So if I were to go to Open Recent, and I just went to my original, so here was the original, and you can see how it's darker. Here's the one where I've changed it. But now I have two files. If I were to look on my desktop, I'm going to have two files. It's going to take up twice as much space on my computer because I saved it as a secondary file. So now I have two files, the darker one and the lighter one. Okay, so now when I work on this lighter one, this file is not changing at all. This one will change. So again, it's going to be about paying attention to what you're working on, what you're doing. And it doesn't seem very difficult right now, but when we start combining images, when we start taking pieces from one and putting it in another, it can get confusing. So I'm trying to go bit by bit so you see what's happening. Okay, so now I've sort of given you sort of image adjustments, and we've talked about zooming in. We've also talked about dodging and burning tools. We talked about the selection tools, but we're not going to use any of those right now. Let's go for a couple of the wow tools. And these are the ones that they should make you just go, wow, when you see what they do. Under this thing called the spot healing brush. Well, let's just take a spot healing brush, and I come over here. Now, I can go up here and change the size of my brush like I showed you. The shortcut, though, is if I take my finger and I use the bracket keys on my keyboard. So the bracket keys, so it goes, all keyboards will have a P. On a Mac, then you'll see a left bracket, and then next to it is a right bracket. If I hit the right bracket, you notice how the circle gets bigger? It makes my brush larger. If I hit the left bracket, it's going to make the brush smaller. That is so great when you want to work on something and you want to see what size. I can make my brush small, or I can make my brush larger, and I can see it here. What the spot healing brush does, this is an amazing brush. Let's say I don't like that thing there. I can take my spot healing brush, click the mouse, drag across. See how it made it look dark? But when I let go, come on. That is amazing. Photoshop, this software program, looked at the pixels around it and said, let's match them. Look, you can't even tell that thing was there. That little thing right there, gone. And if we look at it closely, you'll see that it matched the texture. So right there, spot healing brush, I'm going to make it even a little bit smaller. Look, just go, come on. That is so good. I don't like this thing, gone. Don't like this, gone. Come on. You people don't seem that excited about that. Where's the applause? Where's the, oh my God, that is incredible. Go here to view. I just used the command minus key to zoom out. Come on, you can just get rid of all of those things. I hate those things. Why were those bolts in that wall? I don't know, but I don't like them. They're gone. Ah, this is really annoying me. Gone. This doesn't seem like much, but wait till we get to portraits and you just take everybody's acne out. Boom, gone. That's what this tool is used for all the time. Oh, I don't like that spot. I don't like that spot. I use it all the time when I shoot something and there's dust on a, oh, I keep trying to fix it. Sometimes it's just on my computer screen. Again, oh. Oh, that was on my screen too. I don't like this line. Gone. Really? You people are just so used to this stuff that that doesn't seem that incredible to you? That is just amazing to me. All right, so got rid of those things. Now I'm just trying to clean my screen. Thank you. At least some, it's amazing. Oh my God, all of that stuff. Yes, thank you for acknowledging that. All right, so that's kind of amazing, but watch this. Here's what's called the patch tool. And the patch tool allows you to do this. Remember how we used the selection devices to create the marching ants? So I'm going to take the patch tool over here, and it's funny. It looks like a little patch that you would have sewn into your jeans. You take it and you drag it around an area. Much like the lasso tool, I dragged around that area. And you'll see, okay, the marching ants are here. When I move my cursor in, you'll see a little arrow. I'm going to click the mouse and drag this over. Now I'm not following the area, I'm going the other way. It's showing me what it's going to replace in that. Look, it's just gone. I got rid of that thing and it filled in the wall. It still left the texture of the wall. Come on. That is, I don't know how to impress upon you how amazing that is. I don't like this stain. Patch tool, it's gone. Oh, I don't like the way it patched that. So I can just undo it. Let me see here. If I get the line close, it will just match it for me. Come on, there it is. That is just, and then go back with the spot healing brush. I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't want that. Oh, all that is just a mess over there, get rid of that. You can just clean an image up of all the distractions, things you don't like, that you don't want in it. Come on, those tools are just incredible. Like I said, I use them all the time because I won't notice dust or something when I'm taking a photo and all of a sudden it's there and I just heal it out. You know, I had this shot that I loved and I hadn't noticed that a fly had landed on the plate, which no restaurant wants a fly, but it was an amazing shot. It was so good. Lighting, everything came out right. Smoke was coming off of it. I used that patch tool and just got rid of the fly. Come on, lifesaver. So you'll see how much you will be able to use those tools, especially in your, in your photos. It is an incredible tool. Okay, so that's sort of what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you on this image to go ahead and make some image adjustments to clean up the background. Now, again, do you have to do it this clean? No. I'm giving you some leeway to make it your own image. How, and again, I'm going to take this small, I'm going to dodge a little bit more of his face. I don't like that his arm looked a little sickly gray. I want to lighten this area up. As we talk about images, a lot of times I'll be saying, your eye is going to go to lighter areas. So if you want to bring a little bit more detail into his hair, and also, I can turn this around and I decide that shirt's a little too distracting. I can go ahead and burn some of that in. I want the shadow a little bit darker. I can make the brush really small. The problem is I get a little too hyped up sometimes, and I tend to overdo my images. You have to be careful of that. You're also going to want to save as you go so that you don't lose the work that you've done on an image. So there's all sorts of ways to use these tools together. And again, this becomes the part where you start to decide how do you want your image to look? Do you want it to be brighter? Do you want it to be darker? Is that part of this image distracting? We'll look at taking trash cans out of images. I take lights out, all kinds of stuff as we move forward. You'll see how we're able to do this. And again, we'll be spending a lot of time in Photoshop. After the critique, I'll choose some of the images from each of the critique groups and I'll go back over them. I'll show you how I would have changed them and done things differently to them. So we'll be using these tools. These are a couple of the wow tools. We'll be using a lot of the sort of everyday workhorse tools as well. But for your image right now, what I'm asking you to do is to go in and do an image adjustment to it. I'm asking you to use the patch tool to remove the big rusty thing, as well as any of the other distractions, and to make some of your own choices about what you want to put in or what you want to take out. I mean, it also allows me to, I could, let me take, I could make him twins. I could even, we haven't talked about the transform tools, but I could even make him look like bookends. So, oh my God, those two guys, they're twins. They're out there photographing. How funny. You can go ahead and make so many changes to your images. And we'll talk about overdoing it. Look, the background just looks perfect. Like, oh yeah, they're both standing there against that wall. If I wanted to bring in another image. What is the one I'm looking for? Well, I could drop in new backgrounds and I'll show you how we'll be doing that later. So again, we'll be taking a look at a lot of these things and okay, I get ahead of myself. I get so excited sometimes using this stuff. It's just so much fun. But there you go. Okay, so I'm asking you on this first image, I should also show you this. There's a window called the history window, and you can go back to the last places you were. So here is the history of things I've done to this image, and I can go back to any of them in here, or I can go forward to where I flipped and all of that kind of stuff. Depending on how much memory your computer has, you may need to set the history window to have fewer or more, but we'll talk about that. Like I said, I get so excited, I get ahead of myself here, and I want to just show you everything that you can do because it is amazing. It is an amazing program. For these first images though, for this image, I just want to see that you can learn that you can make an image adjustment, that you can use the spot healing brush to get rid of something, and you can use the patch tool to get rid of a distraction, that you can use the burning and dodging tools to lighten or darken a specific area. That's all I want you to do. It shouldn't take you that long. I'm going to go back over this again on Monday. Well, next week, beginning of next week, and it'll be due by the end of next week. So that's where we're at. That's what this show me assignment is. Again, this first one's pretty straightforward, fairly simple. I want you to get used to using Photoshop. I want you to get into the program, see how some of the tools work. If you want to try out any of the others as well, only thing that I would tell you is make sure when you go to File, you save as and rename it so that you aren't destroying your original image should you want to come back to it or do anything with it. Remember to save as you go. If you like what you're doing, save. Once you rename it, now save it intermittently. And I'll talk more about this as we go on so that as you make changes, you can come back to them. So, all right. So if I go ahead and go to File, Save As, Demo, Twins. Now, when I look at my desktop, I will have 3 images. Here's the original. Here's the one where I made it lighter. And here's the one that it has twins. So 3 files now, as opposed to the one that I started with. Okay. Again, taking up more space. If I wanted to, I would save these on my external drive so that they don't take up too much room on my computer. Okay. All righty then. Let me see here. I think that's enough of the Photoshop stuff for today.